Hey, Bambos.
Hey, Andy.
We're here.
It looks like it.
Apparently, we are here. Is anything in my teeth?
You're good.
Yeah. We've noticed the teeth are often having food in them before, so now we have to have a teeth check. Thank God we don't have a body odor check. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to sit here next to me.
So, Andy, hundreds of divorces.
Hundreds of divorces. Today, we have a guest, and that guest is you because our guest just told us that she thought it was tomorrow. So, Denise Lite, we were planning to have her on today. And we just called and she said, I thought it was tomorrow. So apparently we now are going to discuss what I'd like to broaden the subject. It's not going to be 100 divorces. We're going to discuss relationships in general, and most specifically where you've had to have a breakup that wasn't clean, wasn't nice. So it's going to be an hour talking with Bambos about his life. and I know
which is not a problem. Let's go.
Obviously not. So what I would love though is that as this is an open hour, we've already put in the login details. If you click on the link, then basically you will have you'll be able to click in.
Yeah.
And so we'll have you for the hour discussing bad relationships on
A Wonderful Chaos.
So as you may already have heard, Denise Lite, our guest today, a divorced lawyer of 26 years with hundreds of bad relationships behind her, not her own, but others, thought that we were going to be on tomorrow night, or tomorrow day.
Yeah.
So she wasn't here today with us, which doesn't matter because we're going to have even more fun.
We're going to go deep.
We're going to go deep. We're going to discuss bad relationships. And I think we'll discuss kind of how they get bad, what people do when they're incapable in the middle of those bad relationships, and then how that dysfunction bleeds into their entire lives.
I think it just goes from the very beginning when you meet.
Yeah, we can start there. I think that would be great. And then just for reference, I mentioned it earlier, and we'll mention it a few times on the show. We've sent out a link, and we're inviting you on if you'd like to talk about really bad breakups. Go ahead and click that link. We'll see you in our broadcasting unit, and we'll bring you on. You're not another presenter. You're just going to come in, and you're going to share your bad breakup, and then we're going to say goodbye to you. So you come in ready to bleed your heart out about your worst breakup.
Yeah. And then we're going to unpack it, I guess.
Yeah. Well, you're not on. No. We'll be together during.
Yeah.
So, Bambos, you said something, obviously, which was very insightful. And you said a bad breakup begins before the relationship almost even starts.
Yeah.
I thought that was very kind of poetic. That sounds like something Laser, our guest yesterday, might write on a building.
Shall we send it to him?
A bad breakup starts before the relationship begins. That's quite. And so tell me what makes you say that? Because it feels like I feel that in my bones when I hear you say that.
Two things come from me. One is, who are you when entering the relationships? So what are your intentions?
Okay.
Are you fully embodied, comfortable in your skin, or are you going there like codependent?
Okay. So let's slow down. So who are you when you're going into the relationship?
Yeah.
And when you say, what was the first one you said? Are you going in, would you say, are you going in comfortable in your own skin, like with who you are?
Yeah. Is it a need, or is it something like it's just adding to your life?
Okay. Beautiful. And then play it out further for me. So then you say, let's assume for a moment, right? And this is where it gets a little bit, to what degree can we really say there's no need? But let's for the moment just entertain. If the need is needing to be satisfied through the relationship with the other, then how would you phrase that? How would you kind of characterize that relationship?
I'm trying to think back in my past where that has been true.
Okay.
I needed love.
Okay. So you couldn't give love to yourself.
Yeah. So going in, it was a bit like a contract. I'm giving you this, you're giving me that.
Transactional.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
And did you really feel that way, or
uns-
were you unconscious of that?
I would say at the time unconscious, and also it was very unspoken. We were both in it. And, I mean, the codependency was very clear. After, like looking back now, like wow, like
So you, because I can also refer to mine, but we'll start with you
Yeah.
and come to me. But so you say, I have an attraction to someone,
Mhm.
and that attraction for you is also filling a void of some sort in you.
I would go on another level. Like
Okay.
we attract what we are ready to receive.
Okay. And why would you maybe say we attract what we haven't yet resolved in ourselves, or would you say,
Yeah, definitely.
okay,
Like if you like look at like let's take you for example. You're quite centered. You're quite comfortable in your body, right? Like the
not
way
really. If I smell myself right now, it's pretty bad. But other than that, I'm okay.
in general.
In general, yes.
Yeah. Like you wouldn't have a problem even walking naked on the street.
No.
Yeah.
In fact, did you talk to Ronnie about this yesterday?
No.
Because she said, the only thing stopping you from walking naked on the street is me. That was
I know.
that was the
I know.
discussion we had. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you would not invite in your life confusion. Someone that's very
No.
confused.
No.
Yeah. So even the way you said no was so firm.
Mm.
So if I'm confused, then potentially I will say yes to confusion.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But when you're in that space, you'll see it and you'll say no to it. Because not saying no to the person, but
Not
more
the person,
to the behavior.
Yeah, I know that in my life, basically.
Yeah, I know it in my life and I'm not going to invite that back in again.
Or you might invite it in, but you do it consciously. Like you don't just let it in through the back door and like are surprised. You're like, oh, I love this person even more because of it, which is also possible, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as long as you don't go in and then start blaming them for who they are.
Exactly. Yeah. Now that was my first years with Ronnie when I kept saying, you need to be more active in trainings because I want to get closer to you.
You need.
Yeah. Really, I had to have an intervention with Case at some point who enlightened me to the fact that basically she gets to be who she gets to be and I get to be who I get to be. And now we can both decide if we still want to be together.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's a hard, like, especially if there's a lot of time in a relationship, that's a hard message to deliver because who you are when you meet and who you are 5 years later and 5 years later after that is different.
You're always going to evolve. Can we get that clear? Like, can we agree on that? We're always going to evolve, but then you might say that you can just connect with anyone and just go for it. Like, I'm going to grow anyway, regardless.
Yeah.
Right. But then imagine if you do meet someone that really meets you on the level which actually will challenge you also to get out of your comfort zone.
Uh-huh.
I would say, at least in my body, that's something that I deeply desire. Like really that.
Yeah. I would take one more step than that even, is that I would also say if there are not shared values going into the relationship, that basically then so there might be the sexual bond, which kind of, gives you maybe a blindness to other things that are also present. But if the values aren't there, then when things do get rough, then you guys don't find a common place to come back to connect again. That's what I've seen a lot, is that people don't share the value of, for instance, for me, it's like with Ronnie is we can always delay a talk, but we can't avoid having it. Like there is no, we're not going to talk about that in our lives.
Beautiful.
That doesn't exist. Zero tolerance on that. But what we do is we say, you can delay it. Like we don't need to talk about it now because it's just too charged or something.
Nice.
Yeah. And imagine if that didn't exist in a relationship. Think about that for a moment. If that value wasn't shared amongst both parties.
You wouldn't be able to find each other.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, you can imagine, or you could also see how long avoidance could exist in such a scenario. Like people could be together for a very long time and not be actually connecting because one party is shut down and the other party doesn't have any sort of opportunity to interact with them because they say, hey, I just don't want to talk. I just don't want to talk about it.
And then we go, let's have babies.
Oh, yeah, that's the beauty, isn't it? Now let's figure out a way to like double down on what's not working with another party that actually forces us to be together the rest of our lives or some way.
Like
Yeah.
Andy, for you guys that don't know, he's been married now for how many years?
4 years, maybe 4 years.
Is it 4 years?
I think so.
Wow, 4 years, but together with Rani for 14.
Yeah. 14 years.
And like, it's such a joy to witness him and Rani together. Like, when I look at them, like, they're not a fit, but the way they make it work, it just blows my mind away. Like the dynamics and like I just don't feel any contraction in my body when I'm with them, and that's why I love talking about this subject with you.
Yeah.
Like anytime I've had issues with women, I just come to you.
I don't know if that's a good thing, but I mean, the one thing that the one benefit that I had in my life is that I never got married, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's really weird. I could say that I've been married like 5 times. Because if I had a mentality that I needed to have gotten married, then each woman that I spent over 3 years with, I could say I was married to. So the fact that I just didn't get married is not an indication that. So in some level, I've gotten divorced 5 times already in my life. If we honestly say each relationship, we don't consider just the fact that you put a ring on a finger as a marriage. You say we have a union that didn't work out.
Yeah.
So in that way, I do feel like those 5 failed relationships actually help me understand what doesn't work. And as we all know, like if we don't do the work, our own emotional work, then we bring the baggage into each relationship after that. And that was just something where I think, I mean, I said it to Case and maybe mentioned it to you as well, is that I'm not a big personal development person. I don't know if I've maybe have read 1 or 2 personal development books. Like I don't read them, right? But what I do is I model experiences. Like if I see somebody that's consistent, living a principle or embodying something that I can't quite get my hand on, then I'll stay with that till I can feel it in my body and realize, oh, that's where that is in me. And then I just model after their behavior. And that's the way I learn, because I've often found that when somebody distills their knowledge into a book, it's like so far removed from the source that you're now following the guiding rules of someone, where I'd rather understand what's the essence. Because you'd also say that anyone's paradigm of living has its own limits as well. Like you can't just say, hey, his way is better than his way. You'd say, no, in living that way, there's a certain benefit and potentially a downside to it.
Beautifully said.
And so in that way, I like putting on other people's. I remember I worked with a guy who got so frustrated with me because he always said, Andy, you always bring in new trainers. You get really excited about them. And then a year later, we don't work with them anymore, right? And I'm like, yeah, because I got everything I needed and I understand them. Why would I go back to them? There's nothing. That well has already been fished dry. And that was how I kind of acquired my awareness. So the reason why I shared that is because when it came to relationships, what I saw was that I kept failing over and over again, and the only thing consistent in all that was me. And I think a lot of people don't make that step and say, you know what, I'm the one here that's participating, and I'm not taking responsibility. And it's infrequent that I see people do that. I think I told you, and maybe mentioned it, but like when it started to dawn on me that like I had behavior that was bleeding into all my relationships, I called every girlfriend all the way back into college to apologize. And I apologized for things I wasn't even sure if they'd be true or not. I just knew that, hey, they must have had some impact because I was so blind to this in myself. How could they not have? And then as I introduced it to them, they said, yeah, I know that part of you.
We have a similar story there. I apologized to everyone after I met Jennifer.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
I think you might have mentioned. How was that when you did that?
Some were pissed. Some really received it.
Wow.
Like it was a great way to feel people being pissed at you, like how you've impacted. So it was a lesson.
That must have been wild. And when they were pissed at you, what did they name to be angry about? What was the thing they said? Like, that.
I was called out on not being clear with my intentions.
Okay.
And even though they knew I had several lovers,
Mm-hmm.
I never really, like, the way I was with them, they felt really connected. So in a way, in their mind, I'm not this I'm with them different, if
So,
that makes
so
sense.
you're saying you were in an open relationship with
Hmm.
some of these people. They were so connected to you that they didn't really believe or didn't want to believe that it wasn't that way. And then they resented you when it finally said this, we're at an end or whatever, and wherever it ended.
Yeah.
Wow. So is that part of the, because we discussed a little bit of this on other shows we've done. Is that part of the reason why you're now so disciplined about the relationships you do and don't go into? Is because you don't even maybe know how to trust that part of it? Or how does that bleed into, for instance, your desire to be celibate for a year, if at all? Maybe it doesn't.
Oh, that was just me saying I'm going to break the pattern.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
I just want to remind our 5 viewers
Yes.
that you guys can click on the link in the comments if you want to jump on the call with us and have some fun.
Share a very bad experience. We want a story. We don't want you to drone on about what does or doesn't work. We do enough of that ourselves.
Yeah.
We want the juicy, dirty, messy part of life. That's what we want.
Come on, guys. He's hanging me out to dry every day. Like, please.
Join us.
Join us. Show your humanity.
Yeah.
And there's another thing now
What was that?
there's another, like we talked about the beginning of the relationship, right? So
Yeah. We're only 15 minutes into the broadcast, remember? So
yeah.
I don't know if you want to transition to another topic or you want to bleed a little bit longer on that one.
Well, there's one more aspect.
Okay.
That, like, there's one we said at the start of the relationship, but going into the relationship. So I have met someone recently, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And I sat down on the couch with her last week, and I just shared the stuff that I was moaning about online a few days ago.
Okay.
And kind of shared this stuff. I even said, I don't think we are a good fit.
Okay.
Or I'm not sure if we're going to be a good fit. And that actually, what I saw, it made us closer. Like sharing the stuff, like that you feel, but you're going to wait a few months or even a year or 2 years before you think, okay, now I'm going to end the relationship because it's not working, when you already felt it from the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just really putting all your cards on the table.
Yeah. Well, you're making sure the conditions are there for the possibility. Sarah Kate
Gardner.
Do you know this, Sarah?
I know this, Sarah.
Nice. I like that she called us out. Not that we'd like that word, but failed. Doesn't everything have a natural cycle? I'm really grateful for all my past relationships. My musical taste, food recipes are much richer. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, you can only say that from the understanding that that was meant to be at that moment in life.
Yeah.
So yes, like in that embrace and that surrender, that's when life becomes beautiful. But we've got a talk show and we've got an hour to fill. So we're trying to over dramatize things in a way that make it more appealing. At least I am. And almost celebrate it. Cause in some ways it's kind of funny because Sarah would be right. And also on another level is, we come on in some ways to celebrate it as opposed to like bemoan it. The humor is that once we begin to lovingly appreciate all of that crazy of our past, that's the time we begin to heal ourselves, not judge them, not judge us. Right? There's like a real beauty. I think, one of the episodes I talked after my mom died, I shut down emotionally and I was in this relationship for about 2 years. And then I broke up with the girlfriend at that time. And then I broke up on we went to different universities. She was, I guess, maybe 3-hour drive or 4 hours away. So we broke up on the phone, or I broke up on the phone just because I couldn't even be there for my own pain and I couldn't open it up to anybody else. I was just that shut down. And then she drove the 4 hours. She like came to my front door, knocked on the door, and then she was there unannounced. And she says, like, if we're going to break up, we're going to do it to my face.
Wow.
Right?
I like her.
Yeah. She was strong.
I think she was a keeper, Andy.
She was. No, she had some other challenges in life with drug addiction and stuff. But the thing is that like, and then it was right there. It was honest and real, and it was almost like in me saying or rejecting her again in front of me, I was confronted with how shut down I was, because I really had to shut down in order to like allow myself to feel that disconnected at that moment with her.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was that.
I think the point is we
Mm.
don't like if we see we keep on attracting the same partner over and over
Yeah.
again, then something has to shift
Yeah.
at some point.
Yeah.
And it's what you said in the beginning, changing, looking at myself, because I'm always taking myself into the relationship, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Like if we basically assume that the other person is, say, at fault or they need to be different, then we're not really learning what is it about us that needs them to be different. And in that world, that's just a deep exploration. Like you said, the whole idea of what can I not give myself that I need them to give me so that I feel whole? And if you're not heightening your consciousness around that, then clearly you'll attract the same thing over and over and over again. And you know where that leads. It just leads to frustration, and then obviously the blame and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Which I imagine is part of the reason why you spent the year celibate, kind of reinvestigating who you were going to be in the relationship with others and stuff. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Nice. We do have comments that do come in every so often. If you're watching us on the private side of Andy Chaliff, or if you're watching us on Authentic Relating,
I'm checking my phone
then
now.
please switch over to making your comments on A Wonderful Chaos on the Facebook page. And there we can actually read them. So if you are doing it in other pages, we won't necessarily get it. So please go and do that.
Yeah.
There were some topics that came up that I should even be jotting some notes down, because as we speak, there's things that come up that I think, oh, it'd be nice to dig into that as well. We got into the beginning of the relationship. We spent the first portion sort of highlighting that.
Yeah.
So I would like to kind of go maybe even to in the middle of the relationship, if we take it kind of sequentially. And my experience has been that in the middle of the relationship is where the compromise and then the negotiation handling occurs.
Interesting choice of words.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go on.
So there's the, it's almost like it's almost like self-sacrifice and resentment, right? That comes after you've self-sacrificed, because I've given in because I don't want to lose love. And then at some point the resentment comes in like, hey, now you're not giving me what I want.
Yeah.
Or the other side is the dominance, like we are going to do it this way. And then any dissension to that then obviously would be met with frustration and even anger.
Mm-hmm.
So in that kind of dynamic, you could also equate it with someone who's, we use these terms and yeah, we can agree or disagree that they're a good way of phrasing it, but there's more of a masculine quality to an individual that would be more dominant in a relationship. And then there's more feminine quality, which would be more self-sacrificing, more nurturing. And of course, those two might complement each other, or they might be two of the same. And I wouldn't say per se anything is, in my experience, better than another. I would almost say it goes back to the values again. Because either one will have its own challenges, but if the values aren't shared, then basically you don't grow together through a relationship. That's at least would have been my experience. Right?
Nice.
And me, when I shut the door and told the woman I didn't want to go out with her, what I did at that moment is I wasn't in a relationship with her when we broke up. I separated out and I decided one-sidedly that we were going to break up.
Yeah. So it's like we both, like what I love about you is we agree to be in the relationship together, and we're going to agree together to step out of it. We're not going to play that game where I shut down or say, fuck you, we're not going to be together anymore. There's like a discussion about it.
Yeah, and in that discussion, it means that I'm putting the relationship ahead of whatever I think it should be. Because if I think it should be that, and now I impose it on you, then I'm not in a relationship again.
You're in a dictatorship.
In a dictatorship, that would be more the masculine. And then what, of course, as we get back to then the person who's more passive in the relationship, sort of allows the dominance, and as long as they're loving and caring and understanding that that's what they like and they're attracted to, so there's a consciousness of that, then it may last a really long time without any sort of disruption, because there's a kind of a symbiosis that's emerged, and there's a kind of a consciousness, and there's values to go when there's problems that emerge. But of course, the issue will always arise, and this goes back to the Sarah comment, right? Is that, like, isn't it natural cycle, right? Isn't it and I would like to say, in a weird way, calling it a natural cycle would mean, in some ways, wouldn't even want to see it as a cycle. I'd want to say, isn't it always that we change every moment?
Mm.
And isn't it so that the way we've changed isn't necessarily compatible with our partners? So in that way, I wouldn't call it in that way a cycle. I'd call it a process.
Mm.
That's how I would kind of want to label it. Because if I stay in process, then I assume that whoever I'm with is always going to change. And then as long as I have values where I can meet them over and over again, that means we can deal with whatever comes up. Yeah.
Something came up for me though now, like if we look at how relationships have been evolving, like I think about my grandparents, great grandparents, they step in and they're just together. And like I actually don't remember ever seeing them being emotionally connected.
Okay.
But they stayed together.
Yeah.
And it's not like they had dating apps where they can just jump on and say, you know what, I've got access to sex any given time.
Yeah.
And nowadays, I feel the constant bombardment of
I could do better.
I could do better, or what is it? Like sex is everywhere. Like we have access to it all the time online. A friend of mine is doing a documentary on pornography because how it's shaping this time of our life. There's so many clicks, she says, on it.
Oh yeah.
Like it's crazy. And how many swipes are on Tinder or all these dating apps again?
Yeah.
So I feel that, or I think that people have a hard time focusing or being present with one person.
What'd you say?
People have a hard you fucker.
Yes. Yeah. So you're speaking to something bigger now, though, by the way.
Yeah.
You're saying that the digital age, if we can call it that, right? The digital age has meant that we're easily distracted, almost because we're being like dropped in. Facebook has learned how to manipulate the hell out of us. Mm-hmm. The news cycles have been like only catering to the lowest common denominator of how do I grab a person's attention. And I would almost then say that you would say that the sexual going to the internet, finding porn in a minute, and all this is basically given us like no ability of self-control. Almost we've lost self-agency without even knowing it.
Yeah. I mean, this is what I was speaking to a few days ago. Like, I'm speaking from my own experience, right? Like, I see it so I can get lost on like scrolling, and I'm like, wow. So if I'm going to break the pattern, I also need to stop, like just say no to that behavior.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And it's like, if I see in my own life, it's most of the times when I feel really tired, I feel for a hug or some level of intimacy, and that's the go-to.
Yeah. With a picture on it that's sexy as well.
Yeah.
So you've even distracted yourself there. Wow. Yeah, it's the go-to.
Yeah.
And then that peace of mind goes away.
That peace of mind goes away.
Because you've just outsourced it to a distraction. Yeah. And now we take this back into a relationship with another person.
Yeah.
Like I was interested because, when Ronnie and I started first dating, the iPhone 1 hadn't come out yet.
Wow. Yeah, go on.
Why does that sound like? Is it like Stone Age or something for you, or what?
Well, I'm thinking of Blackberries, actually, Andy.
Yeah, well, Blackberries may have existed, right? And I remember the day when I saw that the speed, because I had a lot of phones. I was always upgrading to the next phone. And every time they'd have a phone, none of the apps on the phones would work. So everyone was trying to make apps at that time that never worked. But with the iPhone, it first worked. And I was like, wow, this replaces this sort of computer, I would never play a video game. But now that it's so accessible, now I have this kind of hit that I play, right?
Yeah.
Ronnie plays her Plants vs Zombies, and and in a way,
Just saying, huh?
but you know that, don't you?
No, I don't.
Okay,
I don't.
I'll
Yeah,
introduce you to it.
I'm
Um,
good.
Plants vs Zombies, and the thing is that in that way, that also became a distraction in our relationship. I would say, Ronnie, I laugh. She used to read so many books, like all the time while we were together. And I'm like, babe, and I remember like what a idiot I was in retrospect. Now I don't, but like this thing makes you so much more efficient. You have so much more access to information. You have this, I was talking to her about it. And then all of a sudden I see it transition from her book reading to like, let me distract my brain for a bit so I can calm down and rest. So in that way, I hear you. Like what we're really speaking to in relationships is that our idea of relationship has changed for not for my generation because I'm already kind of out of that cycle of dating.
You would think.
What do you mean? Like I'm not flipping through Tinder or anything. In fact, once I wanted to test Tinder because someone said we need to develop an interface for it, and it was swiping. And I said, okay, I'll do Tinder. And then I saw in order to do Tinder, I had to like register. And I was like, okay, this doesn't look good if I've registered for Tinder. And now Ryan is like, why do you have Tinder on your phone? But the whole thing being that accessibility means that we're always thinking that there's more and more opportunity, which means we're not settled in where we are at this moment, potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. It's really interesting. Yeah. Yeah. I think it also speaks a little bit to when we're looking at making peace. I don't know who the guest we had on some time ago when they discussed. It was our guest about community. It was Jules Toro. And we were talking to like she's off the grid for 30 years, lived in a teepee, no running water, no electricity. She just lived a life that we kind of look to today and say, wow, isn't it amazing she can self-sustain? Now, if I'm thinking about like that life of self-sustaining, and I was just connecting it back to our discussion right now, in some ways, we asked her, what did she need to be happy? What did she do? What were her greatest? What was her greatest fears? Or what did she think about? But when she put her head, she's like, I was thinking about what's the weather going to be tomorrow. Remember that? She was like talking about just the basics of life. Like I'm worried, is the teepee going to be warm enough for the bedding that we have?
Yeah.
And I think on some level, when you talked about your grandparents' relationships and you think about what they expected from their relationship, is so much different than what we now expect from today's relationship.
Yeah.
Who knows if they were even could choose one another, if they were kind of given to each other at that time.
They were given to each other.
Yeah. So, I mean, in that sense, society created an expectation that we fulfilled. And that was right for us at that moment. And now we're in another phase of our existence, which is like, we don't even have to settle, which means that everyone can wander forever and feel actually weirdly not at peace with themselves. So you've given all the selection, but you're not at peace. And that was one of those quotes that I'll always give you from Case, is that freedom is the absence of choice. Right?
Like, yeah. Nice.
What makes you?
Oh, like if I go into a shop and I want to buy something and the salespeople try to sell me shit, I'm like, listen, if you give me more choice, I'm leaving because I'm not like, I'm here for this.
Yeah.
And then they just back off.
Yeah. Imagine if relationships were like that. Like we just said, our relationship is we're on our own path and we just happen to share it together.
Yeah.
So we're on our own path and we're sharing together, and then that'll lead us wherever it leads us. And maybe we'll be together, maybe we won't be, but we won't not be together because I meet someone or I see a picture of them on Tinder and I think, wow, I might also be able to have that as well.
Yeah.
Like that just is not a healthy relationship. It's disconnected for sure. got some other topics that we can move into. I don't know where you are.
I was just feeling into it.
Yeah. Things coming up that you see.
Mm. Yeah, possibly. I feel stuckness. So the
Yeah.
stuckness is the story I tell myself about myself is that I'm a complete relationship failure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I hear that, it kind of doesn't even want me to be here behind the mic.
Mm. Yeah,
It-
because it would only assume that we're talking as you were authority, which we're not in that case, right?
Yeah.
I think the authority that we both have is we know pretty much what doesn't work because we've done that. That's the authority.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm. And is there something specific that comes up, or is it just a general feeling?
Oh, you know what? Since Monday, I kind of see the story, and all I do is just take a deep breath in and step out of it.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
So that story that I'm just suck at relationships, you actually hear that in your voice more often.
More often, or the story that I had where to suppress everything and push it away,
Yeah.
like the lust shouldn't be there, like that energy. I just take a deep breath. I see it, and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
come back, come back.
Yeah.
I totally get now, or get. I see where you said I wasn't willing to surrender.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't do that on the air, though.
No.
No,
I
God
just-
forbid you give me that on the air.
Really?
That's totally not true.
So let's move on.
I hold on. You said something quite beautiful there. I don't know if I want to move on too quick.
Oh, what was beautiful?
I was just feeling into the. I mean, you introduced back in surrender, right? In
Yeah.
surrender in a relationship, surrender to an idea in my head,
How it should be.
how it should be.
Yeah.
And if we go to relationships, then I've seen that one of the Achilles heels of an interaction between two parties is they can't surrender to the helplessness.
Mm.
And I can go really specifically what that means in the dynamic, because it isn't just like a concept, it's really an action. So let's say I got the two parties. So party A, party B.
Why is that the same color as your hat?
Nice.
Go on.
Okay. So basically, party A says something, and party B has an issue with that. It could be anything. Now, that party B with the issue with party A isn't willing just to accept it's okay, that they have that thought or the feeling or that idea or the belief, and that's okay. So they now have to change that idea, or they have to convince. Thank you. So they have to convince. And obviously, the more they convince, the more this party moves away. So this action happens because this party isn't ready to surrender. And when I would say surrender would be more like they, instead of even saying straight, they almost bend back and sort of let this person sort of come to them. And what that looks like is like, oh, you feel that way? Oh, so I'm neutral to your feeling. Oh, that's interesting. No judgment towards it per se. So what makes you say that? How does that show up in your life? So there's more of a embrace to allow this person to come to them because they've already surrendered to the idea that they might not get it the way that they maybe expect or want it.
So they let go of control.
They let go of
how
control.
It should be. Beautiful, Andy.
Yeah. And what I'll see in the dynamic, which I'll coach often, is that either party, it doesn't matter who does it, because it only takes one person to break a cycle. You don't need both. One person might get fed up breaking it because like, I'm always taking the responsibility here, but only one needs to break the cycle.
Yeah.
And the trigger comes up, which is pretty obvious if you're a little bit more in tune with your emotions. And then if you slow down and say, what's going on? Hey, I just saw what's going on. And then hold the space lightly and yet firmly, then basically things start to work themselves out. But the helplessness is that I can't control them. Yeah.
And the other thing this person might do is fight or flight.
Yeah, true. Yeah, you're right. You're talking about the third option, which is be present
Yeah.
without running away or forcing anything. Yeah. Which that's for me dialogue.
Well,
Uh,
the way I experience being present is if I don't fight or flight, it enables me to feel the thing that I'm trying to push or run away from.
Slow down. If I don't fight or flight,
Yeah.
it enables me to feel the thing that I would otherwise want to push away or go against.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or push away and go against the same. Push away or
Run away.
yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, because what you're doing in the action is you're avoiding being present with what the emotion is.
Or it might be so painful, it might trigger something in you, and then you perceive the other person is causing that pain.
Yeah, that's the initial feeling, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's you are doing this, that kind of thing. Yeah.
As opposed to, wow, I know this, like, this is really painful, and I want to be here for you. I want to be here with this.
Yeah, with this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see sometimes, how we both get triggered a little bit when people speak in terms of this is my truth. We'll have a whole hour given to truth, by the way, because that's just its own interesting topic.
I'm not even going to go there.
Yeah. But when we're doing the this is my truth thing, then to some degree, there's like taking your idea so seriously and in some ways imposing it on the other person as if that's something they have to take seriously.
It just doesn't give space to explore.
Potentially, yeah. You know who I was hoping would be on today?
Mariam?
No.
Who?
Magda.
We
love you, Magda. And Magda's had some rough times last year, 2, 3. It hasn't been an easy one for her. So we send you a hug, Magda. And I'm glad you were on. I was thinking about you and I thought we don't want to invite you on because it might be so raw, it would be uncomfortable. Not for us.
Not for us.
We love you. Yeah. Yeah, man. There was something else that we can put the link back on. We've got 15 more minutes. You people that are watching are welcome to call in, discuss.
We've got a good 18 minutes, Andy.
A good 18 minutes. I thought there'd be 15 and then we talk out the last 3. Being precise, we got 18 minutes. I would love to go into the last section of our kind of sequences, because we said, how do we get it right to begin with? How do we deal with the middle? And now it would be kind of interesting to spend the last portion about the end. Like, how do you have a clear end? How do you do it in a way that almost like brings you closer to the other person as opposed to resenting and being even more angry at them? Right?
Well, I'm going to let you answer because I learned it from you anyway.
Well, I don't even know if it's true. It's what we did with you just because I had more leverage over you and your what do you call it? Your partner.
Yeah.
So what I see is, so first of all, when it comes to the end of a relationship, I've noticed that if people had expectations that they feel weren't fulfilled, then the resentment comes in immediately. And let's agree that society basically imposes those already. So if you buy into the societal norm, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, for all of the things, so you're utterly miserable in your relationship, but you have to stay in because you agreed to it.
And if you don't, you failed.
If you don't, you failed. So if you basically, if you've bought into that whole idea, then you're already going to have some trouble in life for sure. Because now you're not even present with your own emotions anymore because you're expecting something and you're resentful of what didn't happen, which means you lose connection in yourself. Or you become more self-aware, hopefully, and then you allow that to become something that might bring you closer. But I'd like to start there, that in that sense, if we are in a relationship and we're not in connection with what isn't working for us, and then we think we agreed to, and it's like this, all of a sudden you're not in a relationship with yourself, nor the other person. So if I'm
Mm.
in that dynamic in my own work, then I'm often going to try to help people see that there also may be a belief in there, and that belief may then be the problem they have in actually being able to see the other person, because that is often the case. So now let's get to the next part. So at some point, if we go back to what Sarah Gardner basically said, this natural cycle of life, then the natural cycle of life is basically saying, who am I today? And is there a match? At this moment, not even today. Who am I at this moment? Is there a match? Who am I today? Is there a match? Who
So
am I?
so inquiring that all the time.
All the time. And if you think about it and you look at life in terms of who am I today? Is there a match? Basically,
Wow.
you can either rectify any issue that at that moment isn't working for the two of you, or you say there just isn't a match right now. Right? And now this is where the challenge comes in, because if we say there's not a match, which there often won't be, and if we were honest with ourselves, why should there be? Because the only reason why we'd say there needs to be is because we're fearful of what might happen if we separate. Otherwise, it would just be obvious. Like, of course, we're not going to be together. It's just not a match. Like, imagine how simple and easy life gets then. But we have so many expectations, especially those lost years. We've invested 20 years in this relationship. It's almost like
And then you let it drag.
and then you let it drag on for years because of
You've invested 20.
you invested 20.
So let's do another 20.
So let's do another 20. So in that drag time, you've got this whole different like feeling like I don't want to lose the thing that I don't enjoy, but I'm too scared of losing it. And of course you can imagine how long that hangs on. That hangs on a long time, of course.
Who am I without you?
Who am I without you? Yeah. There's the whole chapter in the Wounded Healer book of meeting a woman who basically was being abused by her husband, and she was fearful to leave him because she felt it was a failure. Yeah. It's really quite a kind of amazing to be with someone who was that unhappy and yet that unable just to acknowledge that, hey, being without him will make me happy, but she just couldn't make that step. Right. And
well, I can imagine it's because, how about if I'm unhappy without him?
True. Very true.
Wow.
So in that situation with her, or in general, so let's just say for a moment that we get to the point that we now separate. We say, okay, that's it. This isn't working. Like from that moment, actually, it could be the most beautiful. You could make that the most beautiful moment between the two of you. It's like mourning a death with a partner of that partner.
I can feel that.
And in some ways, like, why wouldn't it be that way?
Because our minds get in the way of how it should be.
Or could be, yeah.
Yeah. That's the only reason why.
Yeah. So we could see and say, wow, I had this incredible relationship for 20 years and now it's no longer going to be working. And now we have a chance to celebrate all the years that we were together, and even celebrate that each one of us gets to have a journey independent of one another. Like, how cool would that be to celebrate? Think about how life looks in that, and with those spectacles on. Yeah. No resentment, no victimization, no nothing.
And it doesn't mean you don't cry and you don't feel. You get to mourn it.
Oh, I would hope you mourn it. Yeah. That meant, if you mourn it, it meant that it meant something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So then I'm now looking basically at the following, is that now when we get to that point, in your case, we had, you and your ex were together in the 15-month course.
Yeah.
So for those that joining or seeing, basically I gave a 15-month course. There was no real curriculum. We gathered 4 days every quarter, so for 15 months, and it was randomly whatever was meant to be at those moments.
It was life-changing.
So, but it was the last one.
Yeah.
It was the last one. At the last one, basically, we had your ex went through what we then call a conscious uncoupling ceremony. I kind of needed to drag you into it because you weren't all that excited about it, but I think at the end you were happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the whole idea for me was a little bit like, because I was asked to do it,
You facilitate
to
it.
facilitate it. So I had to kind of meditate. What would a conscious uncoupling look like? And what hit me was a really powerful like ceremony, and the ceremony would run not all that dissimilar from a wedding. And why should it not run like a wedding? Because it's a celebration of another phase of life,
Yeah.
in my mind. And so, just to give a bit of description, we had the whiteboard at the end of the hall. So, I asked then you and your partner to choose someone you trusted to be your best man or best woman, whatever the best. Is that the best woman? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go on.
And they walked them down, and we sat, and they stand on either side of them. And then I asked each party to get a pen and to write what are the qualities that you appreciate most in the other.
Yeah.
And then each one of them wrote the qualities down, and those kind of in the middle of this board.
I do need to say it
Yeah.
wasn't easy. Like I remember I felt resistance. But it was like writing a letter. Like you really have to move through it and find the love.
Yeah. She
And
wrote double the amount of words on her side than you wrote on your side.
that's because I'm a great catch.
I love it. You're owning it. It's the best. So after each of you wrote all those words down, my whole desire was that you all the things you projected in as appreciation of the other person, where you might have even felt like you needed that from the other in order to feel that in yourself. Basically, the ask was then to tear it down the middle
with the scissors,
on both ends, and then to hand the things that were written. Well, first, each party got to read what the other person wrote about them. So you wrote what your ex did, and your ex got to read what you wrote about her.
Exactly.
And so then there was this moment just to take it all in and just to appreciate how the other appreciated you for all those years. And then what I can believe, if I go back, the ask was for each party to hand that paper back to the other person and now say, now that's something for you to carry inside of yourself independently of me.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah. And then that was sort of like a kind of the giving back to the self of the thing that was maybe possibly projected as a need into the other. Like I need that from him to be that way in myself, sort of thing. Yeah. So that ceremony went, and basically you all walked down, and then we had a lunch afterwards, as far as I remember.
Yeah.
I thought it was quite beautiful. How was it for you? Because you did it. So what was it like for you?
It was one of the best breakups ever.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I like how even using the word breakup doesn't fit. It was just, we're going on our own path.
Yeah.
And what was beautiful, we sat down together and we decided together that it wasn't making sense to move forward anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't like a big blow up or something.
No.
Yeah.
I'm writing her a last letter also.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Just to say that she's loved and appreciated.
Yeah.
Even though we're already over a year apart.
Yeah.
There was something in the beginning, even though we're almost at the end.
Yeah.
It's when we meet someone, we kind of close our eyes to behaviors because we always have this belief that the person's going to change.
Or the desire, maybe not the belief, but the desire.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so we go into the relationship saying yes, but we're not saying yes to the whole package.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking from experience, by the way.
I think everyone's experience.
Yeah.
And what was your reason to bring that up?
Like
what was important about that?
Because in the beginning, if we're really honest with ourselves, that behavior is not something I can live with. Like if I say yes to the person, I know I'm saying yes to the full package.
So you're saying if I can't say yes to that now,
it's not going to change.
It's not going to change.
Yeah. So it's really about being really honest.
Mm.
and even having a conversation about it. Like, hey, I'm experiencing this, or I'm seeing that,
Mm-hmm.
and I notice a contraction in my body. I can't help it. That's just how it is for me.
Like smokers, for instance.
Smokers, or yeah, whatever.
Okay.
Like whatever.
Whatever you feel.
Yeah.
I'd be curious. We probably won't get into this now, but to what degree would you maybe preclude on finding a connection because you might even make assumptions per se about what this behavior is? Because you could see a behavior now, and the question is that something that you could be clear that that is going to that you're going to be the same person? Because let's say I might not be with Ronnie, right?
Yeah.
Because I would have said, hey, personal development, it's got to be, if she's not personally developing all the time, I'm not interested. And some degree, when we got into the relationship, I wasn't even aware that I had this need or desire for her to change. And it was almost through us connecting to like our differences, right? That I thought, oh, now I see it. So it's almost getting back to what I said earlier. If the values are there, and you share the values, that's in a lot of ways, in my experience, more important than a lot of the other things because you can always find your way back to the values. Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's the conditions. I'll often use that word in anything. Like it's the conditions in the relationship, not necessarily the actions or the things that happen within it. As long as the conditions are there, things can be managed and worked out. Cool. Well, I'm feeling complete on this show. You got anything?
Well, I would like you to give at least our viewers, because you always talk about values.
Yeah.
Maybe to give, you gave one example already. Can you give a couple of more?
Values would be I don't blame you for the issue I'm having.
Brilliant.
So I take full responsibility for that. And it also means that I'm not going to do the I feel this way, you should feel. There's no guilt. There's no guilting the other person. And I don't experience that from Ronnie either.
Mm.
So my value is if something's happening, it's not working for me, I'll own it without blame.
Mm.
I get to speak my full truth in that sense without the desire to hurt somebody else. So it's not that I want to make someone feel bad, but I know that denial of it will also mean that we don't connect. So some people would call that hurtful because they're so sensitive that they say, no, you're not supposed to talk about certain things.
Yeah.
But if you're honest, you'd say, if you can hold it lightly, and not like force or impose then basically you can actually create connection through things that may be perceived by others to alienate each other. And I don't believe that you need to alienate one another, and you can also be true to yourself. So you take it seriously, but hold it lightly. That's kind of that saying that I'll often say.
Yeah, I love it. Paradox.
Yeah. And as I said, never not have the discussion. So there's no permission to not have the discussion.
There's nothing that we cannot talk about.
No, it's all on the table. And it doesn't need to happen now, but we cannot say that we're not going to talk about it ever. Like that's just utterly unacceptable. And I would say underneath all of this is I have a deep respect for Ronnie, and I believe Ronnie has a deep respect for me. And we celebrate each other and we don't diminish each other.
Yeah.
And when Ronnie said, everyone might know that, at some point Ronnie came home and said, I want to go to London and I want to live or work. I want to do it there because that's a really great place to be in the finance. And I kind of had this gut instinct, like this, no way in hell is this going to work. Like I was just like, no way in hell.
And I remember this. He said that.
And to her, I said, I guess we're going to London.
Yeah. And to me, he said, it's not going to work. So they just moved to London.
And it was just, and it was because that's what she needed. That's what she wanted. She supported me in all the things I've wanted to do. So I had to then allow her the opportunity to do the things she wanted to do. And that's what a relationship is about. So in a weird way,
you didn't deprive her the lesson.
No. And I think that would be, enlightened self-interest. And people talk about self-interest, and there's enlightened self-interest. Enlightened self-interest is knowing that if I allow them to fully be whatever they are meant to be, then that's going to be good for both of us, even if it doesn't feel good in the initial moment. So So that was an hour. And it's kind of cool because to think to ourselves that we only found out 30 seconds before we went on the air that our guest wasn't going to join us. And we got to discuss it for an hour.
Yeah.
Isn't that nice?
I don't think people like you, Andy, because we only had 2 viewers and you did most of the talking.
I know, I got that. You see, they dropped out a lot. I don't like to talk about how many viewers we have on because by the time this goes live, no, actually, because if someone watches it, there could be 200 views on this thing by the end.
Yeah.
So they might even think that no one ever watches us, where in fact, it is the case that sometimes people don't watch us, but in sometimes we've had 3 viewers that have turned into 300 views in the end.
Yeah.
So we don't want you to think that no one ever watches us because
no, sorry, I made a bad joke there.
No, it wasn't a bad joke. It's just I realized that I was sometime when we were doing this before, I was realizing when we talk about 2 or 3 viewers on the live stream, sometimes we've had like 1,500 viewers when there's only been 5 viewers that were live. Yeah. So tomorrow we have David Wilson Johnson. He's on May 29th, which is Friday tomorrow.
5 p.m.
5 p.m. Central European time.
The world's most sought of the...
After. Sought after.
Baritone.
I love it. You've only heard me say that like 5 times now, haven't you?
Yeah.
I'm just getting sick of it.
He's getting excited.
Jumbo. I love this man. He lived on the corner. He's this incredibly fun, loving, playful individual that's so accomplished and yet so down to earth. And so pleasure to be with. And we have Magda. Thank you for being with us for this hour as well, Magda. We look forward to seeing you. It was great to be with you on the show. And we look forward to seeing you next time on what, Bambos?
A Wonderful Chaos.